Hello everyone, welcome to Barca News. It is June 10th, 2025, and Javier Tebas, in a surprising statement, has hit back at Real Madrid and defended Barcelona. Who would have seen this coming? Also, we're going to discuss how much Lenglet has freed up on Barcelona's wage bill. And finally, Deco has finally talked about what happened during the whole Vitor Roque fiasco. We have a lot to discuss, so let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Mo and we'll begin this video with the news that Javier Tebas, in some surprising statements, has hit back at Real Madrid and defended Barcelona. Now, this is what La Liga's president had to say about this whole refereeing situation, because some people in the Madrid-based media are saying that what Barcelona are doing when they complain about referees is the same exact thing that Real Madrid do with their videos. And this is what Javier Tebas had to say. Barca complains about the referees twice a season. Madrid before every match. It's funny that when they stopped having any chance of winning the league, the video stopped. Holy shit. Javier Tebas defending Barcelona and hitting back at Madrid. And he is not lying. Yes, Barcelona does complain about the referees every now and then. Every club does. But when it comes to Real Madrid, it's every single week. Week after week, month after month, year after year for the past 2-3 seasons, they've been doing this. And the difference is that Barcelona and the rest of La Liga clubs, they complain after the fact. After a match has happened, they say, hey, we don't like what the referee did. Madrid, they do it before the match. Why? Because it's not about complaining about referees. It's about putting pressure on the referee before the match, because they're trying to get the referees to rule in their favor by putting pressure on them. They're trying to influence the competition. Now, I'm glad that Javier Tebas has said something, but how about we actually do something about this? Because this is true influence of the competition. Not the whole negrera where 2 years later there's absolutely no evidence of influence in anything. No. This is true influence of the competition, as we've seen time and time again with all the horrible calls that have gone in favor of Madrid at the expense of the other 19 La Liga clubs. Now, on to the next bit of news, because, ladies and gentlemen, Barcelona are currently working on a summer plan for two injury-prone players, which are Dani Olmo and Ronald Araujo. Now, Julio Torres, who has been in charge of the fitness of the players, another blessing signing by Barcelona aside from Hansi Flick, but Julio Torres has been working on a summer program for both Ronald Araujo and Dani Olmo. This program is like a personalized training routine for each player that, of course, is going to help them strengthen their muscles and avoid injury as much as possible. And it's going to be based kind of on like what the club did with Pedri. Now, if you're not aware of what happened with Pedri, I reported about this several times. But, as you know, last season was not good for Pedri. He was constantly injured. So Barcelona, they, with the help of a lab here in the USA, they took a sample of the muscle fiber or the tissue of Pedri. They sent it to the lab. They did an exhaustive DNA test where they studied all the muscles of Pedri, the fibers, the tissue, how it is, how it grows, how it heals, how it regenerates, etc. And based on this in-depth study, Barcelona came up with a specific training, diet, sleeping, hydration, everything plan for Pedri, where he would train with the team, but he also had his own routine that he would follow. And thanks to that, Pedri has not been injured this past season, knock on wood. And now Barcelona are trying to follow the same exact thing with both Araujo and Dani Olmo, where they're going to do an exhaustive study of the two, and they're going to come up with personalized routine for each of the players so they could try to avoid injuries as much as possible. And I have to say, when it comes to Dani Olmo, I really hope this works, because we've seen Dani Olmo can be a difference maker, can be an important player. However, he has spent half of the season injured, so if he can stay healthy, I think that would be a huge boost for Barcelona's attack. Anyways, let's move on to the next bit of news, because as I reported yesterday, Barcelona officially terminated the contract of Clement Lenglet, who has now joined Atletico Madrid on a permanent basis until 2028. So now the question is, how much did Clement Lenglet free up on Barcelona's wage bill. Now let's dig into the numbers because Clément Lenglet had a salary of 16 million euro gross per season. He had a contract until 2026. So that was 2 seasons left, 16 million each, 16 plus 16. That's 32 million euros. But before Barcelona sent him on loan to Atletico Madrid, what they did was extend his contract until 2027. In that way, they would be able to divide the 32 million euros that was left on his contract over 3 years instead of over 2. So then his salary became 10.6 million euros per season, down from 16. So this is the salary that will be removed off Barcelona's books. However, there is a big but here, and that's that Barcelona are not under the 1-to-1 rule. If they were, the entire 10.6 million euro salary of Lenglet would be able to be removed, and you can use that space for someone else. But since Barcelona are not under the 1-to-1 rule, they can only remove 60%, or they can only use 60% of the space that's left from the removal of Lenglet's salary, and 60% of 10.6 million euros is 6.4 million euros. So technically, Lenglet will leave a space of 6.4 million euros on Barcelona's wage bill that Barcelona would be able to use to register someone else. Now, this figure could rise. It all depends on how much Lenglet's salary was in comparison to the salary structure. If Lenglet's salary was 5% or more of the entire wage bill, then he will be considered a franchise player, kind of like Frankie or Lewandowski. And in that case, Barcelona would be able to use 70% of the salary or of the space that he left on the wage bill. So 70% of 10.6 will be 7.4 million euros. Now, again, if Barcelona were under the 1-1 rule, they will be able to use the entire 10.6 that they removed. But because they're not, they're only going to be able to use 6.4 or 7.4 if he's considered a franchise player. All right, on to the next bit of news because Deco has finally addressed the whole Vitor Roque failed signing. And no, it was not to take responsibility. It was to blame Xavi Hernandez. Apparently, Xavi's at fault for what happened with Roque, and this is what the Barcelona sporting director had to say. For me, his arrival in January was a mistake, but we didn't have many options. Xavi wanted it. The original plan was for him to come in the summer of 2024, and I think he was harmed by his early arrival. And this is where Barcelona's demands come in. If you're too preoccupied with what the press says, you can have problems. His first 6 months weren't good, and I also think there was a shortcoming in the part of the staff and the club in identifying the problem he was facing. We weren't able to help him in that regard. Coaches are always consulted on signings. The decision to bring him in January was made by Xavi, and the decision was to extend the adaptation process by 6 months. Ultimately, this is the nature of football. Going to Europe early is always difficult, especially if it's to Barcelona or Real Madrid. So Deco pretty much washing his hands and saying, hey guys, the reason this signing failed was not because it's me, not because I messed up. No, it's because Xavi. Xavi requested the signing of Vitor Roque 6 months earlier, and since he came 6 months earlier, it's Xavi's fault. And here's the thing. Xavi had absolutely nothing to do with the scouting of Vitor Roque. He had nothing to do with the supposed dozens of positive reports that said that Roque was great. Xavi didn't even have to do anything with the signing of Vitor Roque. When Xavi requested the arrival of Vitor Roque was after he was signed. After what Deco came to Xavi and said, hey, we just signed this guy out of Brazil. He's amazing. He's going to be great. He arrives in the summer. And Xavi was like, okay, can he come now? Because, I don't have options. And Deco was like, okay. So let's be honest here. Xavi had absolutely nothing to do with this signing. Now, Deco says, well, it's because he arrived 6 months earlier. In other words, had Vitor Roque arrived in the summer, he would have been ready. But since he arrived in the winter 6 months before, he wasn't ready. Again, another BS being fed to us by Deco because, let's be honest, the reason why Vitor Roque did not work out is not because he arrived 6 months earlier. It's because he did not have the level to be a Barcelona player. Now, let's assume that Deco is right, that had Roque arrived in the summer, he would have been ready. But since he arrived in January, he wasn't. Okay, that's fine. So the first 6 months that he spent in Barcelona, he wasn't good enough because he wasn't ready. By the summer, he should have been ready. And what happened in the summer? Flick looked at him and said, never mind. And then Roque went to Real Betis and spent time there. Guess what happened at Real Betis? Vitor Roque was not even good for Real Betis, a mid-table team. So if Vitor Roque was not ready for a mid-table team by the summer, why do you think he will be ready for Barcelona by the summer? And again, it's not because Roque came too early, because Roque was not good enough. It took Xavi 5 seconds to realize that. It took Flick 5 seconds to realize that. And it took Real Betis, a mid-table team, 5 seconds to also realize that. So Deco, please, assume responsibility that this was a failed signing. It's your fault. Don't blame Xavi, who's not at the club. And also, he's doing this because he knows Xavi is not going to say anything back. Because as much as I've always said that Xavi is not the right coach for Barca, I've always said one thing, is that there's one thing you cannot doubt about Xavi, is that he is 1,000,000% culé. Xavi Hernandez is more culé than the crest itself. So of course he's not going to say anything, because he would never talk badly about the club or anyone in it. And I think Deco knows that. And this is why he's washing his hands. He's blaming someone who's not at the club anymore, Xavi Hernandez, and someone who he knows is not going to respond, because Xavi loves this club too much to play these kind of games. Anyways, let's end this video with the news in regards to Rafael Leao, because there's a lot of talks about Jorge Mendes trying to bring Leao to Barcelona now that Leao has requested to exit AC Milan. And Leao right now is not a priority for the club, not only because of his price of 70 to 75 million euros, which Barcelona cannot really afford, but also because right now there is no consensus within the club, where Joan Laporta would like to see the player at the club, and other people within the club don't necessarily agree. There's a divide within the club, with some who believe that yes, he's an incredible player and he could be an addition to the squad, or a great addition to the squad, and with the other half of the club thinking yes, he is a great player. However, given his inconsistent performance, and given his constant problems with the locker room and his coaches, they don't think he would be a good addition, especially when we're talking about a locker room that's very young and as an impressionable like Barcelona. So right now, Jorge Mendes trying to bring Leao, but no consensus in the club as far as bringing Leao in. So for now, he is not a priority for FC Barcelona. Thank you for watching. That is all. I did upload another video before this one. If you haven't seen it, make sure you do. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. And as always, Visca Barça.